Have you heard anything about Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' space company?
I've only heard of it. That's about it.
Okay. So I want to talk about one of their products that they're launching, which I think is really, really interesting. And I want to talk through a lot of the different possible businesses that could come off of this, because what Jeff Bezos is doing is building what's called a road to space. And that's not a literal road, but it's basically, what is the infrastructure that we can build? Basically, this is Blue Origin hat. What is the, like if I'm wearing a Blue Origin hat, what is the infrastructure that we can build as Blue Origin to make space innovation more accessible to other entrepreneurs and people, technologists? And I think it's super interesting. So I heard about this on Lex Fridman podcast. So Jeff Bezos basically, like, since he sold his, divested a lot of his ownership in Amazon, has been pretty silent lately. Like, we've not heard from him for years. And he's been kind of just gallivanting around the world on his yacht with his girlfriend, Lauren Sanchez. And we've not heard about him. We've just seen photos of him. He looks jacked. He looks great. And then he goes on Lex podcast, right? He goes on the Lex Fridman podcast for the first time, having not made any public appearances in such a long time. And he's talking about all the stuff he's doing at Blue Origin. And it was such an interesting podcast. I encourage everyone to go listen to it. But he really is like in the weeds. Like, we think of Jeff Bezos as being this kind of like very like wise, like slow speaking, but like just poignant, kind of like business, like genius, right? That's kind of how a lot of people view him. Obviously, lots of people have negative, there's negative associations people have with Jeff because of the Amazon warehouse worker conditions and pay and all those things, which, by the way, I think, like,
I worked in a warehouse.
How was it? Did you like it?
It was fine. It was chill. I was fine with it. I was lugging big boxes over the shoulder, like sorting packages. Yeah, I did it. So
very nice.
Shout out to Amazon workers.
Yeah, and also Amazon has really like a lot of interesting programs where like they'll help you pay for college and stuff, and it's accessible to every Amazon warehouse worker. So I don't know. I think Amazon's a very good company for the most part. There's obviously flaws, but we don't need to talk about the flaws right now. This podcast was super interesting. Jeff is extremely knowledgeable about lots of technical details with the rockets, how the rockets are being built. He's in meetings every day. He says that he's working harder than he's ever worked before on Blue Origin and the stuff he's doing. So it's not like he's just been like MIA bouncing around the world. It seems like lately he's been fully in the weeds, operating Blue Origin, building rockets, and being a part of the design, engineering, lots of those discussions. One of the products that they're launching is called Blue Ring. And I found this product to be super interesting. So Blue Ring is basically a payload. So it's a satellite. It's going to orbit the Earth. And it is equipped with tons of different tools. And I find this interesting. So basically the vision for Blue Ring is to create this road to space. Basically what Blue Ring will do is Blue Ring will have tons of tools on board that will allow other payloads, things orbiting Earth, to essentially just utilize the Blue Ring services in order to do various things in space, so that people building payloads don't have to build their payloads with all of the necessary tools and boosters in order to change orbits or to refuel or send information back down to like communication centers on Earth. So I'm going to take a pause here. So basically what Blue Ring is it's like a space services satellite. So other entrepreneurs can build very simple payloads designed only for the one thing that they need, the core business logic, right? Like, what's the one thing that my payload needs to do that I'm innovating in? Maybe it's collecting a very specific type of Earth data or space data, or maybe I'm like imaging different parts of the solar system. And then Blue Ring is what I will connect to in order to send communicate information back down to Earth. So I don't have to build like special antennas on my payload. All I have to worry about is collecting data, and then I just send it to the Blue Ring, and the Blue Ring is equipped with all the sensors to send it back down. It's not just for communications. Blue Ring is equipped with transportation functionality. So like if your payload is coming around, it can connect to the blue ring, and then the blue ring will literally transport it to like a different orbit if you wanted to change orbits, as a, you know, if your payload needs to change different orbits for whatever its mission is, you can connect it to blue ring, and blue ring will help you change orbits. It's also got refueling capabilities. So again, your payload doesn't have to be built with crazy fuel tanks or you know, the ability to like charge up your I don't know exactly what the energy storage is for, you know, electric propulsion, but you can refuel with blue ring. Data relay, so this is like communications, right? So like you just connect to the blue ring APIs, send blue ring your information every time you pass it, and then blue ring will figure out how to transmit it to the data centers on Earth, and you don't have to worry about any of that. Logistics, and then in-space cloud computing capabilities. So, and this one I think is so cool. And the reason it's really cool is because, what is AWS? Alex, do you know what AWS is?
Amazon Web Services, but
okay, what does that mean to you? Do you have any idea what AWS does?
I think servers.
Exactly. That's basically it. So what AWS is essentially, back when let's say you were in the .com days and you wanted to start a web company, you literally had to know how to set up servers, build a network, and then you also had to build your application and, you know, provide a service to your customers, all this stuff. So what AWS allowed you to do is very easily build a web application or a web tool without having to do all of the hardware related stuff with setting up like you're racking servers, connecting them, building a network, managing network security, configurations, all of that complicated stuff. It's very like standardized, but if you didn't know how to do it, that was like the gating item. You couldn't start a web company. But what AWS did is they came along and said, hey, let's build all of the boilerplate stuff, and then just let people run their own like business specific applications. But like, if I as a developer can focus only on my specific business logic, I only have to write code for my website front end and my, you know, back end services, and I don't have to worry about any of the other boilerplate stuff, managing, you know, authentication or, you know, scaling up a database or all of these other complicated things. And then security configurations. I mean, there's an ocean here that I'm not going to get into. But AWS abstracted all of that away. They said, let us handle the hardware and all the boilerplate code. We're going to put it in huge data centers, massive data centers, and we're going to open this up for everyone to use. This blue ring is essentially space services. It's not web services, it is space services. And then they also have on board this satellite or this blue ring orbiting, you know, payload. They have special computing hardware in the blue ring that you can use. Like, oh, let's say I need to perform a really, really complicated machine learning task, but I don't want to have to equip my payload with the necessary GPUs and computing devices needed to perform that task. I'm just going to outsource it to the blue ring, let the blue ring do the task, and then I can go pick up the information once the blue ring is done processing my task. I just get my, you know, I pick it up next time I pass the blue ring. So what blue ring is basically doing is allowing you to say, focus only on the thing that your payload, your satellite is supposed to be focused on, and then just outsource all the other complicated stuff to us, so that you, as the engineer, can just focus on the thing that you want to get done. And I think it's super cool. I think the possibilities makes space, you know, access to space so much more accessible. Well, access more accessible. It's really interesting. I've been thinking, like, what do you think are some new businesses that are going to come out of this? I think there are already companies that are willing to do private launches for companies. So like, if I'm, let's say I want to put my payload into space, there are companies that will already, you know, take, you know, 500 tiny payloads, and then they'll just launch them into space for, you know, different companies. And then all of these tiny payloads could just like use blue ring, right? So if there's already companies that are getting payloads from the ground into orbit, you can probably imagine that those companies could transfer these micro payloads that don't have a lot of these special equipment, and you could just rely on blue ring for that special equipment. There's a lot of angles here. Like, what are the new sensors that we're going to equipping payloads with that only need to talk to blue ring? Like, there's going to be a special sensor that only talks to blue ring, and there's going to be a company that goes and builds that sensor. It's probably going to be some sort of antenna, but if it only needs to communicate with blue ring, then it can be specialized for that purpose, and you can have payloads that are equipped with the bare minimum of things that are needed. Anyway, I'll let you react to that. But
well, My my reaction is, could you dumb that down for myself and anyone else who may not have followed like payloads and what are they actually doing? Like very dumbed down, simple.
Yeah, sure. Basically, in the past, let's say I wanted to, a payload is basically something that orbits the Earth. So you can think of a satellite. I'll just use the word satellite for simplicity. Let's say I wanted to collect information about the salty, like how salty different parts of the ocean is on Earth. Right, the oceans on the Earth. I want to see how salty different parts of the ocean are. So my satellite's going to image the Earth, and it's going to use the image data to basically calculate how salty different parts of the ocean are, whatever. And what you would have to do is you would have to figure out a way to communicate all of your data from your satellite back down to Earth. So you would need a special antenna in order to transmit that data back down to Earth. Okay. But then you also needed, you needed your camera. You needed to be able to have like some sort of computing device in your payload, in your satellite that can, take all of the image data and store it. And then maybe you also wanted to change orbits, right? Like if you can't image it in, let's say I can't image like the northern and southern poles of the Earth just because, of the way the orbit I'm in right now is. I would need to get special boosters on my satellite so I could basically propel myself. A booster is like a little rocket engine, and it'll just push you into different orbits. Or at least it's not always a rocket engine, but you can think about it that way for this. It'll push you into different orbits, so then you can capture image data from like the North Pole and the South Pole of the Earth, right? Things like that. So basically what it is like I have to equip my satellite with all of these extra tools and like rockets and antennas and communication hardware in order to just do the simple thing of imaging the Earth. But now enter Blue Ring. It can transport my satellite to different Earth orbits. It can transmit data back down to Earth because it's already set up that pipeline. All I need to do is transmit the data to the Blue Ring, which is much easier because we're both orbiting the Earth. So every time my payload passes in a good close by to the Blue Ring, I can transmit that information to the Blue Ring, and then Blue Ring can beam it back down to Earth. So basically what this means is that Blue Ring will abstract lots of the complicated technology that needs to go into a satellite. It'll abstract all of that so you can focus only on like the camera and then like your computing hardware to just transmit information between Blue Ring. So I've just dumbed down my satellite requirements for building a satellite. I've just gotten so much simpler now because of Blue Ring. And this is basically what AWS did for the web, for the internet. So I think this will be really, really interesting because what it means is that so many more entrants into the sort of space technology market and so many more, so many new products. And I don't know exactly where the market will go with this. Like, I don't know what other products could be created from this, but I do know that it makes space more accessible to companies. And what that means is you're going to have a lot more innovation. You're going to have, different products enter the market there. So I just think it's very interesting.
Yeah. Seems like you said, it could make space more accessible to companies. So maybe we will see more space stuff going on. But yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about this, so I wouldn't have too much to add myself. But yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Something else that Bezos said in that podcast that's really interesting is that he believes the future of humanity is basically one where people live on big spaceships. How does that initially, what does that sound like to you? That doesn't sound great, right?
I mean, sounds interesting. Reminds me of Wall-E, but yeah.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what he envisions. He basically envisions people living and working in space. And the idea being that in order to preserve lots of the Earth's beauty and resources, people will have to move, we will have to work in space. We will have to do lots of heavy industry in space. And the idea being that lots of people will basically go into space in order to work and to live and stuff. And then they'll basically use Earth as like a vacation spot. Like you go down to Earth and see the natural beauty and go swimming and hiking and all this cool stuff. And see how like the inhabitants of Earth still live a very unadulterated lifestyle. Like, it's very like, natural lifestyle. But he believes that people are going to kind of fare into space based on how well we can build like space shelters. So like where people can live in space, and then ultimately like it kind of just increases the footprint of people, right? If you think of like an orbit, it's like kind of like a shell around the Earth, right? And then if you have like people living in orbit, and then those orbits get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have more and more people living in these orbits around Earth in these big spaceships. And then maybe one takes like a journey off, and they try to go live on a far away planet or something. I just think it's very interesting. It definitely sounds more of like a natural transition than kind of what Elon proposes of like, oh, we're just going to go to Mars and live on Mars. But Mars is also, you know, the only like accessible planet nearby that even is remotely livable that we know of. So
Yeah.
I don't know. This is sort of the future of humanity in space is really interesting to me. I think for the most part, there's probably going to need to be some sort of breakthrough in physics in order for us to go to any other possibly livable planet, or like this is another option, some way to do like Matrix style, like freeze humans, you know, and then like wake them up when we arrive kind of thing. So like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you can just sort of like freeze them in time, and then they wake up when they're arriving at the hopefully livable planet somewhere in the distant galaxies.
Yeah. I mean, it would kind of seem like eventually once we tap out Earth and once our population continues to grow, then yeah, we're going to have to do something with that. So yeah, orbiting space could be definitely an option.
I think it's really possible that if we do like if we do get humanoid robots right, and we have AI that is, you know, very competent, it's very possible that we could have, you know, sort of like humanoid robots manning the ships that will take us to like like planets of distant stars that have livable atmosphere and resources. And then we would have to figure out a way to like cryogenically like freeze and thaw humans so that like people can like leave on the trip, and then like it's like a 5-minute trip. Like you go to sleep and then you wake up when you're there, and it's
Right. I mean, if you can
really
technically freeze an organism's metabolism and kind of like just halt them, you know, they wouldn't necessarily be aging, right? So
right.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that would be the yeah. That, I mean, I have no idea how possible that is. That's probably
Yeah.
far out, but that seems like the only real way we can find another Earth-like planet to live on. I think it's worth trying to do, though. By the way, lots of people think it's not worth trying. Like it's like, oh, we should just figure out a way to do better with Earth now. It's like, yeah, we totally should do that, but I think we should also do this. Like this is also something that is important, because if you extend it to the extremes, Earth will die. Earth will get hit by some sort of asteroid, and it could kill all humans either way. So it doesn't make sense to put all of our eggs on the Earth basket. We do need to figure out, try something else. We need to try.
Yeah. Yeah. The thought of Wall-E, the Wall-E sci-fi reality becoming reality is kind of funny and interesting. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how soon, you know, spaceships with bunches of people on them comes to reality. Probably way, way, way far out, but interesting to think about.
Totally.